Welcome to Workday Payroll, Payroll Input. In this session, we'll explore the various payroll input methods and review how to add and adjust pay input. Payroll input is a way to include calculations that affect worker pay when you run payroll, but aren't automatically calculated, such as salary, which comes from compensation. Through payroll input, you can enter hours, units, or other values to earnings or deductions. You can also override, add to, or subtract from a worker's recurring earnings and deductions, such as salary earnings. There are multiple ways to add payroll input in Workday. You can upload payroll input from a spreadsheet using an Enterprise Interface Builder, or EIB, based on the Import Payroll Input web service. Also, you can collaborate on payroll input with worksheets. Worksheets are shareable files saved in your Workday Drive. Lastly, you can enter payroll input manually using the Add Payroll Input by Worker task. Let's explore the Add Payroll Input by Worker task. There are several ways to access this task. To add input for an individual worker, you can select the Add button on the Input tab of their Pay menu. Alternatively, you can select their related actions, navigate to the Payroll menu, and select Add Input. If you access the task from the search box, you can enter input for one or multiple workers. There are two pages to this task. On the first page, you specify the worker or workers, as well as any data that all of your entries have in common, such as the pay component or start and end dates. You can also enter a batch ID. The batch ID isn't required, but we strongly recommend using it. Batch IDs allow you to run reports and verify totals across all entries associated with the batch. More importantly, however, if you make a mistake with your payroll input, you can delete all the entries together using the Delete by Batch ID task. Without a batch ID, you need to delete entries one at a time. You can also add entries to an existing batch. The new entries don't have to share any attributes with the rest of the batch. The common data that you enter on page 1 will display at the top of page 2. Page 2 also includes a grid where you can enter payroll inputs for each of the workers you specify on page 1. Each worker gets a new row. The more you select on the first page, the less data entry you need to complete on the second page. However, you may limit your options on page 2 if you select too many values on page 1. If dates, pay components, or processing options differ for the groups of workers, don't select them on the first page so that you can enter them worker by worker on the second page. Now that you're more familiar with payroll input and the Add Payroll Input by Worker task, let's review how a payroll partner can use this task to add and adjust payroll input. Meet Beth Liu, a payroll partner. As part of her job, Beth needs to add and adjust hours for a group of hourly workers. 3 workers have been unable to access the system to enter their own hours for the bi-weekly period, so Beth needs to add hours on their behalf. Additionally, 1 weekly worker is being paid extra this period due to working on a special project. It's been agreed that if he successfully completes the project, he'll be paid $2,000 for the week. Signed in as Beth, Kai will demonstrate how to complete each of these tasks.
From the first page of the Add Payroll Input by Worker task, let's start by searching for and selecting each worker. Next, create a new batch ID. Use a naming convention that works for your organization, such as initials and the payment date. Then, in the Usage field, choose Payroll and select OK to save the batch ID and return to the Add Payroll Input by Worker task. To add hours for a single pay period, we'll need to enter a start and end date. The end date determines the pay period to use the payroll input in, so make sure the end date is within the correct pay period. For the pay component, select Hourly Pay USA. Then in the Processing Default section, select One Time, Override, and regular run category. This tells Workday to overwrite the worker's regular hours for that pay period. We finished with the common data, so let's select OK to move on to page 2 of the task. Moving on to the input section, each worker that we selected on the first page has a row in the input grid. Let's add a row under input details for one of these workers. The type defaults to hours unprorated. We can only enter hours here because the pay component, Hourly Pay USA, is configured to only allow input for hours. If we needed to add input for a value outside of what this configuration allows, such as rate or amount, we need to select the special entry checkbox on the first page of the task. Next, enter 80 in the value field to give the worker 80 hours for the pay period. Do the same for the rest of the workers, and then select OK to complete the task. After running a pay calculation for these workers in the current period, let's review the results. We'll drill into the Change Payroll results and select a worker result, confirming that Workday processed the 80 hours from payroll input. Now Beth needs to add a payroll input for one more worker, this time to adjust their earnings. Let's use a new method to do this. From the Results tab on the Pay menu of the worker's profile, select the current period's related actions, navigate to the Payroll Input for Worker menu, and select Add Input. This takes us to the Add Payroll Input by Result task. This is similar to the Add Payroll Input by Worker task, but it's a single page, and the worker's name and period start and end dates default in. On the row in the input grid, let's add the batch ID that we created earlier. This time, we want to override the worker's pay, but the Earning Hourly Pay autopay isn't configured for payroll input. We need to use the Special Entry checkbox. Recall that this option enables payroll professionals to add input for earnings and deductions even if the earnings and deductions aren't configured to do so. After selecting the checkbox, the Hourly Pay autopay earning is now available. If you make a special entry, we highly recommend including a reason in the comment field. You can run audit reports to review your special entries and check the reasoning for each one. Next, add a row to the input details. When we select the Type field, notice all the options. With the Special Entry checkbox selected, you can add input for any of the pay component related calculations on the earning, as well as amount. For this situation, select Amount. Then, enter 2,000 for the value. This overwrites the worker's original earning with a flat sum of $2,000. Finally, select OK to process this input. Workday puts Manny's result in a requires recalculation status. Select Recalculate Result and then OK to run a pay calculation and update the status to In Progress. Notice that the amount for the pay component is now $2,000.
In this session, we've reviewed the various methods and reasons for adding payroll input. We also demonstrated how to use the Add Payroll Input by Worker task and similar tasks to add and adjust inputs. Thank you for taking the time to learn with Workday.